Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cosmic Closet podcast. Here with me is Blaine.
Hello, hello. We're back with another episode 41. And today we have an anti-vaxxer with us. We have Maya. Maya, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm the anti-vaxxer.
And
Okay.
I kind of wanted to start it off. Like what can you tell us about the anti-vaccine movement, or maybe for our listeners that don't really know much about it? Well, how would you describe it?
I think that we're all different. With any community, everyone's not going to believe the exact same thing, obviously.
Right.
Uh, Myself personally, well, I think there's some misunderstanding that we think vaccines don't work at all. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. Myself personally, I just want vaccine safety. Um, I come from a family of educators. My grandfather was a rocket scientist. You know what I mean? So like,
Mm.
I'm not an idiot. I've done
Right.
my research. It's just I've I've also read enough to understand. There's a lot of just crazy fucked up ingredients, and there are a lot of negative side effects for some people. You can get seizure disorders. Um, and that sort of thing. So I just want vaccine safety, and we just have to be vigilant when we're thinking about the fact that we're putting tons of chemicals in tiny little babies, and just that should be taken seriously. People should take pause and not just trust everything their doctor says. I just want people to do their research. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. And to kind of follow up with that,
Mhm.
do you trust like the FDA's? I was like looking through their safety procedures, and they do like years of testing, and like have to license companies before they can even pump out the drugs and the
Right.
vaccines. Have you like looked into that at all about like all of the fail safes, how they do like I think it was a minimum of 2 to 3 years of testing before it can be available to like the general public.
Well, with some things, but then with stuff that the babies are getting, sure, but then you have things like swine flu vaccines that they just kind of cooked up in 2 weeks and were injecting into people, and we don't know what the hell that stuff is. And I mean, I'm not as familiar with FDA stuff as I look at a lot of the CDC stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but, again, I can speak for me personally. I don't trust the government at all. So, like,
I have a
yeah,
question about that. I have a question about
yeah,
that.
what the FDA says doesn't really mean much to me. I take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. Well, let me jump to the second question, and we'll kind
Okay.
of hop back to that. Unless you had something to add, Jacob.
No, no.
Okay. So, when I was kind of looking at it, I guess anti-vax has been around for a while. Like they linked it all the way back to like 1700s, like France. But
Okay.
like,
Wow.
how did you find yourself in the movement? Like, do you physically go out and protest, or do you like mainly engage like online through the internet and like social media?
I mainly engage online and through social media. I think for me, it started before I kind of even knew there was an anti-vax movement. Again, I'm a skeptic, and I don't trust the government. So that's kind of where it started for me. And then of course, once you start going down those avenues, then you do find out things. So I'm vaccinated. I'm a kid from the 80s. Like, I'm an 80s kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm vaccinated. I seem okay. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Other than being a conspiracy theorist, obviously. But
That's why we have you on right now.
right. So that's what kind of where it started. Is I was just like, I don't trust the government to inject me with anything. Like, I don't know what's in that. And then, let's say 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk of if vaccines were linked to autism. I think that was kind of the red flag for me that got me started down the path of like actually talking to other people and engaging. Um, I don't believe that now. That's been debunked. I think there's people that are still researching that and trying to figure out, is there a connection? But that's definitely not the hill I'm going to die on, to say that vaccines cause autism. No,
Mm-hmm.
That's
I've
good.
backed away from that I've backed away from that for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say because. Oh, keep going. No, you're fine.
No, I was just gonna say I think we need to figure out what is. I mean, something is causing autism. Like, something is happening, but all will be revealed in time, I suppose. But I'm not gonna say it's vaccines for sure. Who knows?
I was reading an article actually about autism, and I think there's an increased amount of people with autism because of just increased awareness about the disability, and also the methods they're using these days. It's just kind of inaccurate, and they get a lot of their numbers from just basing it off a population. Like, it's just a statistic and less of just a per capita kind of thing.
Right. I think.
Also, I'm kind of glad that you said that you didn't so let me get this straight. You don't believe that vaccines cause autism, right?
I'm not ruling it out, but I don't believe it. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
that's
well,
not something that I propagate in any way.
Yeah, it's just like the main thing that the research that I looked at led to was how that whole belief is based off of a 1998 paper that a British doctor
Right.
put out,
Yeah.
and it was discredited, and he lost his medical license over it.
Yeah, so that's that particular claim has been debunked, but I still think it's worth continuing to research. Well, whether it's vaccines or not, I think we need to figure out what is causing autism, and like he was saying, a lot of people are just saying, oh, well, it's not that anything's causing it, it's just doctors are able to find it more, so we're noticing it more, and that sort of thing. And granted, this is anecdotal, but like, I think of how many people I know now that have autism, my friends' children, versus when I was growing up, I don't remember there being 1 in 30 autistic kids. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember being in school and there was an autistic kid in every class. That just wasn't a thing. And now there are people that are, there's a spectrum, but nowadays there's people that are notably autistic, and I feel like there's so many more of them than there were when I was a kid. I don't just think it's the numbers, does that make sense? I don't think there's just more diagnoses than there was. I think there actually are more kids getting autism now. So
Okay.
I hope they find out why, but I'm not gonna say it's vaccines.
Did anything else that you saw, Jacob, explain that?
No, I didn't see anything about actual amounts going up. But...
Okay, so that's kind of that was one of the main things, was just the whole autism link, because I think, would you say, do you know are a lot of your friends involved in this movement?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I mean, I've met a lot of, quote unquote friends. Like, I have online friends because you attract each other, but no, I don't think any of my friends are anti-vax. I mean, I have had friends come to me for questions because they know I am. I know, like, my best girlfriend, when her daughter was getting vaccinated, she was really nervous because her doctor told her there were a possibility of developing seizure disorders. So what they did is they were like, if she's going to get a seizure disorder, we'll know right away. So after her daughter got vaccinated, they just sat in the doctor's office for 6 hours to observe her. And that's what made her feel safe. Although I do know 2 people, I've dated 2 different guys that both have seizure disorders that they blame directly on vaccinations. One of them, whose mom told me his whole vaccination story, and he was in and out of the hospital and everything with the seizure disorders. And just to give an idea, so he's 22 now, so whatever time period that was, he was vaccinated. And then the other guy's 25 now, and the 22-year-old, he's still flagged as having seizures, but he doesn't actively have them now. But the 25-year-old, it's still a big problem. He just totaled his car last year having a seizure. So that's a very real thing. Like I said, the My friend's doctor even said, you need to know this. Not all doctors will tell you, but I'll tell you. So, and my fear, I guess, is that, okay, a 6-year-old having a seizure is different than a 3-month-old having a seizure. A 3-month-old having a seizure could really cause some issues. Or if you consider that, like with my ex that's 25, he's going to have the seizure disorder the rest of his life. So it's just something to consider.
Right. Kind of going like, is there a reason why you don't trust the government? Like, did something happen to you, like, in your life?
I mean, I have issues with authority in general because of things that happen, but no, it's not like I had a particular run-in with any particular government agency. It's just a general mistrust.
Yeah,
It's just
I understand that.
talked to yeah, go ahead, Jacob.
Yeah, I understand that feeling. I have the same distrust.
Yeah. But I think they've kind of proved it. Like, for instance, once upon a time, the NSA was a conspiracy theory. Now we know the NSA is very fucking real. Do you know what I mean? Like, they listen to everything that we do. So I think, I mean, well, and there's several things. There's the Tuskegee experiments. There's what the CIA did with the crack epidemic in the 80s. Like, there's things that were once considered conspiracies that we now found out are true. So I think the government's capable of anything they decide they want to do, So yeah, I don't trust them.
It's we were talking about flat Earth last episode with our guests, and the main movement behind that, they don't trust scientists, they don't trust NASA, so it's kind of almost every conspiracy comes back to not trusting the government in some way.
Yeah, that's true.
So this is kind of like with the FDA, with the CDC, you kind of don't trust them.
Well, and for me in particular, like, for instance, I told you guys before we came on that I was in 2 accidents, and I have life-altering pain now. Since my second accident, I can't do anything I used to be able to do. I'm not working anymore. I used to go to concerts and festivals all the time. I used to go on road trips all the time. And now I just kind of lay on the couch all day because I'm in so much pain. And what I'm getting at is, because the CDC has cracked down so hard on opioids, I can't get opioids to live my life anymore. And I didn't ever have an addiction issue with them. They just took my pain away. And so there's a huge community of us. There's a huge community of people in chronic pain. So when I see what the CDC is doing to us with their crackdowns on what to us is kind of life-saving medication, because there's been actually a lot of suicides from people that are in so much pain they just can't live with it. So
they can also look at it from the other side with, like, overdoses.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I know that's a thing, but I think there's a difference between drug addicts overdosing and people taking the pills they're prescribed the way that, you know what I mean? Like, we as pain patients shouldn't be, what's the word I'm looking for? Punished for what junkies do. You know what I mean? And plus, the more research you do, a lot of the drug overdosing now, and especially since they started cracking down so hard, is all connected to fentanyl, which people are getting on the streets. So you can't look at street drugs and then what happens on the street had nothing to do with what I got from my pharmacist that my doctor oversaw and regulated. And I think just the kind of propaganda right now is mixing all that stuff up to make us super scared of opioids, and a lot of us are paying a really heavy price for it. So I'm not happy with the CDC at all.
True. Right, that might be a future episode.
Yeah.
But, let's get back on the vaccines.
Yeah.
So I guess it's made headlines recently. One kid that actually defied his mother was on Capitol Hill recently testifying. He ended up getting vaccinated without her permission.
I read
go ahead.
That article. No, go ahead. I did see that article.
Yeah, so basically his mom he tried to approach her numerous times, and she just said that vaccines aren't safe and that she refused to take him to get vaccinated. And he ended up learning about it at school, that all of his friends found out that he was one of the only ones that didn't receive the school vaccines. So he went online to Reddit and asked how to get it once he turned 18, and Redditors told him where to go to get vaccinated, and he drove himself, got vaccinated, it went viral, and then he ended up being invited to testify on Capitol Hill about it. So I was just wondering, like, if you had a kid and he wanted to get vaccinated, would you be for that, even if it was underage, if he was maybe 10, 11?
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking that as you were telling that story, because I have two thoughts. Number one, I think it probably is a lot safer for an 18-year-old to get vaccinated than an 18-month-old. Like, that's part of the problem, is just how little these babies are when they get vaccinated. And I think by the time you're 2, you get about 30 vaccines, which again is so far removed from when I was an 80s kid. We got like 5, and now they're getting like 30.
Would you think that, like, maybe they want to do it when you're young because of how vulnerable a baby's immune system
Yeah,
is?
I
It can also
mean,
be the problem, though. Like, they're so vulnerable that the vaccines could cause issues.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, to me, it's just common sense. Like, I'll get to back to that in a second, because there's a veterinarian that has some insight on that, so I'll stick a pin in it. But to answer your question, yeah, if my kid came to me, if I had a 10-year-old and they came to me asking about vaccinations, I think that's something I would be open to researching with them. And if that's what they really wanted, allow them to decide for themselves if we felt we were both really informed on the topic. I would just hope they knew the risk, but I wouldn't, if that's what they want, I wouldn't deny it. But I also wouldn't just inflict that on my child as an infant without any consent or say. I think that's the difference there for me personally.
Mm-hmm. To kind of specify or get more clarity, are you against all vaccines, or maybe just there's the tetanus one, there's the MMR, hepatitis shots? Are there specific ones that you're only against, or are you over every single kind of vaccine?
I mean, personally, I won't get a flu shot or anything. It seems to me like, because I know my grandmother gets one every year, and that ex gets one every year, the one that has the seizure disorder, and they get the flu anyway. And I'm like, you know who doesn't get the flu? Me. Had the flu like once in my life, and I've never had a flu vaccine. So I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there are a few that, to kind of go off on a tangent, and that stick out, like anything that have like animal parts in there, just because I don't eat meat, and so that would go against my belief system to have myself or my kid vaccinated with anything that has. Plus, I just think that's kind of odd. I think it's weird to inject yourself with an animal product, personally.
What if it
And
was for like a dangerous disease though that could kill you? Would you have to make a tough choice?
yeah, I think it would be a tough. I think it would be a tough choice. Like, yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be situational. There's also the vaccines. I pulled up these notes: hepatitis A, rubella, which is part of the MMR vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Varicella, maybe the chickenpox vaccine, and Zostar, the shingles vaccine. All of those have uh, human cells in them that were derived from aborted fetus tissue. And this, you can look all this up on the CDC. I know it sounds crazy, because when I first heard it, I was like, that's crazy people saying crazy stuff. But it's very true. So, so I think it's odd to be injecting ourselves with, the WI38 is human diploid lung fibroblast cells. The MRC-5 is human diploid cells. Um, I think my concern with that would be and again, I don't know enough about it. I would path shock to a scientist probably. I would be concerned, is there DNA in those cells? Are we injecting ourselves with foreign DNA? Um, and how would that manifest in our body? Like, just a lot of really freaky. I just think it's getting into really freaky territory that makes me want to stay away from everything.
Right.
Honestly. So, yeah.
And Jacob, do you have anything to add?
No, it sounds understandable. I want to add something about the flu, though.
Hmm.
Sorry. I think whenever you get the flu and then get over the flu, that's just one strain of the virus. So even
Right.
if you do get a vaccine and then get the flu after, they could be completely different strains of the virus.
That's true, but to me, that's exactly why it seems kind of silly to get a flu vaccine, because there are so many strains, and even different years, it might only be 13% effective, or one year it might be 80% effective. So to me, I'm like, why are you injecting yourself with a bunch of chemicals you don't know what they are when you still might get the flu anyway? To me, that just doesn't make sense, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's one way of looking at it, I guess.
Here's the part that worries me about the whole movement is in regards to maybe a threat that it could have on public health if it actually gained a little bit more momentum. And let's say 100,000 people didn't get a vaccine. That's 100,000 people that are walking around with a disease that they possibly could develop and then spread in other ways. Do you think that maybe the anti-vax movement could like turn itself into a like public health issue or for public
Well,
safety?
I think there's I think there are enough people like me that just want safer vaccines. I know there's a whole I wish I could tell you the name of them, but I know there's a whole like coalition of parents, and they are the ones that are out there protesting. And
Hmm.
I know about a year ago they they won some court case to get vaccines, certain vaccines re-examined that apparently hadn't been examined in 3 years, and they're supposed to be looked at again once a year apparently, just to do
Right.
safety checks and whatnot. So if we could have guarantees that they're safe and a lot of these risk factors taken away, maybe there wouldn't even be anti-vaxxers anymore. That's kind of the thing. It's like, we're not the I don't feel like we're the bad guys. We're just saying, step it up. Stop injecting our children with poison that could have all these side effects.
Well, I feel like you might be a special case in some of the people that you may know because there's a huge movement that thinks that it causes autism and they won't put anything inside of them. So I
Right.
feel like that's the group that I'm more worried about. You like your argument seems fairly reasonable. It's
Thanks.
the complete complete anti-vaccinations that could get a
Yeah.
little scary. Because I
Well,
I read well, no, go ahead.
well, yeah, and that's one reason I wanted to come on, just to kind of get rid of that myth that we're all just like ignorant hillbillies, you know what I mean, that just don't trust anybody.
Hmm.
That's not the case for all of us. I mean, you're going to have your different sects within any community, and I do know some people that think vaccinations don't work and that think they actually might make problems worse. Um I mean, there's all kinds. Um I don't honestly. I feel like it's a smaller percentage now that still believe there's links to autism. I mean, that like that's the hill they'll die on anyway. I mean, again, it's a conversation that kind of always is happening, but I do feel like a lot of us, when it got debunked, were like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Like, so
Right.
of the hundreds of like friends I've made through this, autism isn't something we really talk about, but that's anecdotal, so I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the point that I want to try to like hit on is like now recently we see there's like measles and mumps outbreaks, and I think there's some in Oregon. There's some on our college campus. Um, and back in 2000, the measles was completely eradicated in the U.S. I think we only could get it when people were traveling from other countries. So, do you think that that could be linked to the anti-vax movement now that we have these measles pockets opening up around the U.S.?
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, because now you have people not vaccinating their kids.
It's kind of
Again,
dangerous.
I mean, again, though, I have to just go back to the solution to that. To me, is fix the vaccines and you solve the problem. If we feel safe with the vaccines, we will vaccinate our children, and you won't have to worry about it. I don't think it's a good idea to say, well, because this kid here and this kid here have measles or mumps, that we should continuing to just go the way we're going, where kids are getting sick, people are getting seizure disorders. The government has a national vaccine injury compensation program, and so that program, and you can look that up too. It's called National Vaccine Injury
Hmm.
Compensation Program. They've already paid out 4 billion with a B in compensation for people injured by vaccines, and the majority of that payout was between '06 and 2016, but the fund was started in '88. So something's obviously going on. If nothing was going on and vaccines were safe, then why would they have paid out $4 billion? So
Right.
I feel like they need to fix things on their end rather than blaming us, because if they fix things on their end, then maybe we would vaccinate the kids and this problem would go away. Because again, when I was a kid in the earlier '80s, I'm an elder millennial, this wasn't really an issue. I mean, you're going to have your skeptics all the time, but something has happened, I would say, to younger millennials, Gen Z, whatever. Something's happened in the past like 10, 15 years with vaccines where people are getting sicker. Their vaccine program, they're getting 30 vaccines before they're 2 years old. That wasn't the program when I was a kid. So
Well,
something's
yeah.
wrong.
Well,
Something's
medicine's
wrong, and they need
evolving.
to fix it.
And also, I think there's always going to be, like you mentioned, the compensation fund. There, in every surgery, there's a chance for error, and in every development, in every vaccine, there's obviously going to be something that could happen. I mean, they tell you before you get your wisdom teeth out that there's a 1 in a million chance you won't wake up from the anesthesia,
All
and
right.
there is a 1 in a million person that probably does have a bad accident while he's getting his wisdom teeth out. So who knows on that end? I think the fund maybe I don't know, what did you ever see, like what the complaints were for what they
Well,
paid out?
like I said, you could I mean, the information is there. If you go, if this is on the government
Yeah,
website,
right.
um I think it might be under DHS, actually, if I recall. And they have graphs and charts and
Hmm.
stuff there, and they have PDFs for every year going back to '88 that
Yeah, I'd
might
just
have
be
that
curious as to
information
like what
there.
the main complaint was.
I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see here. There's some other things I wanted to touch on. Oh yeah, so I read that this is kind of what the main reason why we wanted to have this episode was. There was a 6-year-old boy in Oregon, in your home state, and his parents refused to vaccinate him, and he ended up getting tetanus, and he was in the hospital for 2 months. Had to have a hole in his throat to drink water, and then the bill ended up being $800,000 after the end of it because they refused to vaccinate him. Like, what would be your statement on that whole situation of that 6-year-old?
uh I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because I mean, I would not vaccinate my kid. I don't care.
You
If
wouldn't
we have,
vaccinate your kid for tetanus?
I wouldn't. I mean, I'm gonna have to study that particular vaccine better, I
I don't know
think.
if there should be a study between vaccine or an $800,000 hospital bill. If I saw that on my kitchen table, I think I would turn back time and just get the vaccine at the end of the day.
I mean, I think when the risk, though, and maybe not with tetanus, but with some of these other things, is when the risk is so high that, because something that's this new phenomenon that's happening is a lot of kids are going in to get vaccinated, and then when they leave, and I mean within seconds, I'm talking about from the car ride there, from the car ride home, they have just regressed. They've like lost all motor skills. They're just like limp rag dolls, and more parents are like recording this happening and are like, what's going on with my kid? And there's just so many reports of this. And so I would rather be poor or have to sacrifice whatever needed to be sacrificed to know that my kid was safe and healthy. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but your kid will be safe and healthy if they're vaccinated. And I'm like, but what about all the cases where they weren't? What about all the cases where a vaccine harmed a child and you don't know if it's going to be your child or not? I mean, you don't really know. I do know there's a genetic element to it. I mean, I've watched some other podcasts, I've read about that it does have to do with something as general as just certain allergies. So if they could figure out what testing could take place maybe early when your kids are little, and maybe that's a program they could start, is let's have a program to see what vaccines your kid might have a reaction to, so we know what vaccines are and are not safe for your kid. It's just kind of making a priority, like, to have the kids safe in their whole body, not just safe from mumps, but safe from any other thing that vaccines might cause. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I was just gonna reference this. They did this big study in Denmark over a decade, and they monitored over 650,000 kids for 10 years, and that's where they found no real change in them, especially with that whole autism argument.
Uh-huh.
So, and that might just be a small case study. I mean, 650,000 isn't really a big number compared to the rest of the world, but I think it would be interesting if there was a study done about the claims that you're claiming and overall.
650 were or were not vaccinated?
They were vaccinated, and then they
were
monitored them over 10 years.
I will have to say that's in Denmark. Maybe, I mean, that's not the U.S. I mean, that's how I always feel with things like that. I'm like, maybe if I didn't live in the U.S., I would trust the government more. Maybe this, maybe that. But when we're talking about the United States and vaccines in the United States, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say there's some things, though, that maybe the government knows better than any non-expert would?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Would you agree that there are some things that you would prefer the government would have more expertise in than you? Maybe defense or infrastructure, and then public safety and health? Do you think that maybe the government has more experts in that to where they maybe might be making better judgments, like calls, compared to critics?
I mean, I'm not saying they don't have experts. The problem is they also have motivation. I mean, they have the government at this point is basically a giant corporation. And then you have, that's what's interesting to me, is the same people that want to talk about big pharma and bitch all day about big pharma are the same people that love vaccinations and think that anti-vaxxers are crazy and stupid. And I'm like, how did those two things go together? I just feel like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the whole conversation. Like, either big pharma is evil or they're not. Why are they not evil when it comes to vaccine? You know what I mean? So when money becomes involved, that changes the conversation of, we'll just trust the experts. Well, not if they're getting paid off, not if this person's making money off of these people being injured.
Yeah, but do you think an FDA or a CDC inspector is pocketing any of that money? When you think they would leak something if they knew that inside the vaccine is something that would give everyone a chance of autism?
Well,
That'd be a huge conspiracy.
Some doctors have spoken out, and this is a conspiracy that I'm kind of embarrassed to even talk about, but no. I'm just gonna say it's out there. I'm not saying I haven't done my research enough.
Alex Jones.
But but there supposedly many of the naturopathic type doctors that have come out against vaccines have wound up dead in bizarre ways. So the theory is that someone is killing off these naturopathic doctors who tell the truth about vaccines. Again, that's just something that's out there. I don't know a lot about it. so there's that. But I do know there's a couple doctors who are speaking out about vaccines now, and I guess this is a time I could bring up the veterinarian. Granted, that's a whole other thing, but there was a veterinarian that was just saying, because dogs get vaccinated too, animals get vaccinated too, and he said he had to leave his practice because he's like, the same vaccine I give a Great Dane, I give a Chihuahua. It's the same size vaccine. He was like, that doesn't make sense. You know, he's like, in any other medicine, you wouldn't do that. You would give the dosage as according to you at least look at the size of the person and the size of the dosage. He's like, but with vaccines, it's just a free for all. And I'm like, we're talking about dogs here. So if that's issue with dogs, then you're doing the same thing with babies and 9-year-olds. And, I just think we need to take pause and not just assume the government is trustworthy, or that our doctors even know what they're talking about, because doctors just know what someone else tells them, and it just goes up and up and up the ladder. So we have to do our own research.
Jacob, did you have anything to add?
Well, the thing about the size of the dogs and stuff, I was about to ask earlier if you thought maybe if some cases of bad reactions to vaccines could be caused by like doctor negligence, and I have no idea, but do you know if doctors are supposed to change the dosage according to size and weight and stuff, and maybe some of them don't do that and cause these problems?
I don't have any idea about that. No. I mean, from my understanding, it's the same, like your initial vaccines, like your MMR, whatever, it's all going to be the same size. And then you get your boosters as you get older. And so those boosters, I think the size is different. But from my understanding, they don't care, if you weigh 8 pounds or 80 pounds, it's the same MMR. Okay. But I don't really know. Actually, I mean, that's my understanding.
So let me ask this. So if we had the measles eradicated, tetanus was eradicated in Oregon, but then let's just say the government makes a perfect system to where all vaccines are given in the correct dosage, or they seem safe, would you be for like mandatory vaccination? Like if the government said you had to get next, let's say we had another polio incident and they said it's safe, would you be for having your kid vaccinated?
Mandatory? No. I don't think there should be mandatory anything on what someone does with their own child, especially not handed down from the government. That's never worked out well in history. But would I personally vaccinate my kid if the government really fixed all these issues and vaccines were safe and doctors did what they were supposed to do? I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen, but in that fantasy scenario, sure. Because I'm not against the idea of vaccinating. I'm just really concerned about some of the ingredients in the vaccines and their harmful side effects. I mean, of course I don't want measles and mumps and everything to exist, I just want us to be more careful about what we're doing to our children.
So let's say they say they're not mandatory and you can have a choice, but if your kid infects someone, there could be a consequence legally. Would you be for a bill that might impose legal consequences on anti-vaxxers if their kid got the measles and then spread it around?
No. But that's just, but that goes more to my anti-government stance. I'm just very anti-government, so I'm like, I don't want a bill for much of anything. So, right. Yeah. I mean, I get the idea behind it, but to me that just feels like bullying. Like you're bullying parents into poisoning their kids. Like, I just think it's really fucked up.
Yeah, well, there's the whole Oregon incident where, child could be in the hospital for 2 months. It's just back and forth. There's always two sides to it.
Right.
Italy actually just banned unvaccinated children from going to schools until they're 6 years old. And then after that, the parents are fined.
I know that's talk of happening here too, and I think there's already some schools. I mean, it's not. I don't know if it's federally banned on a state level. I mean, it's not quite to that point yet, but where a school just maybe has a policy where they're not letting unvaccinated kids in. I don't have a problem with that per se. Like, I don't have a problem with a school having a policy or even a state having a policy. I don't know about a federal policy, but because if you can't take your kid to this school, you can take them to a different one. So I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
Implementing those kind of policies with school, I don't, because you still have a choice. You just could choose not to go to that school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One question I wanted to ask is, do you have or is religion a part of your belief? Because some people don't believe in modern medicine as like a religion. They don't take, normal medicine. They don't take Tylenol. They don't get surgeries.
Oh no, religion, no, has nothing to do with it.
Has nothing to do with it.
No.
There's some people that do not take Tylenol based off their religion. So I was just curious if that's a part of the anti-vax movement.
Well, for some, I think, again, because of the vaccines that have animal parts in them. I mean, there's vaccines that have pork in them. When I say animal parts, I don't mean whole parts, obviously.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean some derivative. So, if there's pork in a vaccine, that's going to cause an issue for, Muslims. So you have to look at that.
Okay. Jacob, did you have anything else?
No, not really. There's a lot of background noise. I'm so sorry, guys.
Oh, is it from you?
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Someone's knocking on my door. I've got to step away for just a second.
Oh yeah, no, you're
Okay.
fine. Go for it.
Yeah, my roommates are a little wild right now.
I know how to text mine and tell them to shut up.
There was a truck earlier that was whizzing by.
Oh, dude, I heard that. Street race.
I coughed through. I was like, God damn. I'm sorry. It's a good talk.
Yeah, it's gone.
Should we cut this in post or just leave it?
Yeah, we'll cut this.
I wouldn't mind just leaving it. It's a little...
Man, make sure everyone you follow our Discord.
Yeah, follow our Discord. Subscribe and...
There's a rumor that we're gonna have a flat earther on next episode.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
Someone was delivering 7-Eleven, not to me. So I don't know what that was about.
We thought it was the government.
You never know. You never know. With me, you never know. One day it very could be.
All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of what else I had. Yeah, we covered the outbreaks. I guess what type... Oh, no, okay, I know what I want to do. So Facebook and YouTube have kind of been targeting the anti-vax movement. I think, Jacob, you said YouTube's demonetizing, anti-vax videos?
Yeah, they're completely removing ads from...
Yeah, and I think Facebook is blocking groups.
Jesus.
So, what's your thought on maybe the reasoning behind that? Do you think that maybe they're doing it for safety or...
I mean, I left Facebook months ago just because, I mean, I understand that they're privately owned platforms, but I don't like the idea that people are muting any kind of dissenting voices. I just have a big problem with that. So, again, I mean, it's their company. They can do whatever they want, but I think it's kind of dangerous when people aren't allowed to hear other perspectives. You're kind of they're creating their own echo chamber that they want. And I mean, again, they own the company, they can do that. I understand why they're doing it. I just hope others will pop up in their place to let all of us have a conversation and not just a conversation of the voices they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of I agree with that, because I think silencing people just gives movements like this more power to not trust anyone, and like
Yeah,
like
because
flat
it
Earth especially.
kind of proves our point.
Yeah,
In a way, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think the better way to go about it is maybe just allowing it to happen, but maybe promote, I don't know, other groups also, like the other side of the argument. So maybe
Right.
pro-vaccine. And I know Australia has launched like several $1 million initiative in their country that is like announcing how vaccines are beneficial. So maybe
Right.
if Facebook did something like that, or I don't know, Twitter.
Well, like on YouTube, they could do that. They could allow the anti-vaccine videos, but then in the side, in the suggested videos, they
Recommend,
could
yeah.
make sure they pop up some that are pro-vaccine in there
Mhm.
that
Mm-hmm.
counterbalance it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that would
mean,
be a better way to handle it.
The videos are still allowed on YouTube. I just gotta say that, but yeah, they can't get ads or anything on them.
Oh, so they're just demonetized.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. But I mean, that's almost a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Who isn't demonetized anyway?
Right. Right.
I mean, that was really the biggest thing that I was gonna focus on was the whole autism. Like, once you said that you didn't believe that it linked to autism, that
No.
was
I screwed up the interview for you.
no, you didn't screw it up. I gave a sigh of relief. I thought this was gonna be a little bit more tinfoil hat.
I've got a tinfoil hat just on that subject. You know what I mean?
I'd love to hear more of your conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
Well,
do
actually,
you by chance happen to believe in the pyramids and aliens? Because that's Jacob. Jacob believes in that.
Okay, not in aliens necessarily, but no, you go first. You go first.
I actually was gonna talk to you guys before you let me go about the quote unquote gay frog thing, this Alex Jones gay frog thing, because
Yeah.
do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I watched one of your top 10 conspiracy podcasts
Oh,
a while
gosh.
back.
Dude, that was the best one. I love that one.
So, have you done any further research on that at all, or you just kind of left it there?
The gay frog one?
No,
I don't think we've touched it.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, it is based in something. Alex Jones, a lot of what he talks about, he just makes it sound crazy because he's Alex Jones, and he goes on these crazy rants, and he's this whole character. But he says plenty of factual information. You just kind of have to research it for yourself and separate from him, if that makes sense. So anyway, a professor of integrative biology at Berkeley, whose name's Tyrone B. Hayes, published a paper on this topic. He did a TED Talk. I think he did 2 TED Talks at this point, actually, about this phenomena with the frogs. And it's based on an herbicide called atrazine. So apparently 80 million pounds of the herbicide atrazine are annually to United States crops. And because it's such a widespread use, that's the most common pesticide found in ground and surface water in various parts of the country. Because, again, 80 million pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of papers written on this. I would just say do your research, look up.
Wait, but it turns frogs gay?
Tyrone B. Hayes. Well, that's the thing. But, what it really does is, if anything, it turns them trans. It kind of is changing the sex of the frogs.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're laughing. You think it's a joke.
No, that makes sense.
Look it up. Like, a scientist is the one that discovered this and has researched it, and there's been many papers written on it. So It's just they noticed it because it's in the groundwater, so they noticed it affecting frogs, and so then they started doing some experiments, and yeah, it's kind of creating frogs that are intersexed or is fully turned. I don't know which one, males into females or females into males. I don't remember which, but yeah, it's. So I think that's where the gay thing came from.
Yeah.
Because it.
Yeah, I see what you
Yeah.
mean, and especially with Alex Jones. Like, it's a lot easier to get the message out there by saying X is turning X gay instead of like
Right.
the water is poisoning frogs and turning them into the opposite sex. Like, you
I
don't
think
get
the
clicks that
fear,
way.
though, and I think kind of the point wasn't about the damn frogs. It's, well, if it's doing this to the frogs, what's it doing to us?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Oh yeah,
that's,
they've been talking about pesticides like linked to cancer for years.
yeah,
I believe in that. I mean, nothing you put on a crop is going to be too good for you. It's just protecting us from other stuff. So, eye for an eye.
right.
And they're made
But
to kill
anyway,
things.
I just kind of wanted to throw that out there to say there is some that's fact based. So not just a crazy conspiracy theory.
No, I forgot we did that one. Was that in our episode? Did we mention that?
I don't remember. I
It was
do
a
agree.
content episode.
It was good.
I do agree. Alex Jones does say some truthful things. I like to keep that hush hush though.
Yeah. Well, I followed Alex Jones way back during like kind of the 9/11 truth movement, and then he just changed with this whole Trump thing, and once he went Trump crazy, he went super crazy. So whoever this new Alex Jones is to me nothing like the anti-government Alex Jones I was first introduced to back in the early 2000s.
Was that when he uncovered like Bohemian Grove?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
we
it
talked
was.
about that on the conspiracy one.
Yeah, Alex Jones was a cool guy back then. Now he's, well, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
His
I don't
Sandy
know
Hook
what
comment was a little
Yeah.
over the line.
He's made a lot of over the line. I mean, he's also like Islamophobic and whatnot. That was a huge turn off for me for sure when he started going that direction, and just yikes. Because I don't know how you go from being anti-government and just focusing on kind of, you know, conspiracy theories that made sense to just kind of being hateful and saying racist fucked up shit. So
Yeah.
you know, and the Sandy Hook thing. So yeah.
Yeah, that was messed up. All right, well, I have nothing else as far as the vaccines. Jacob, did you have anything?
No, it was good.
That was a good talk.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on. Thanks
Yeah,
for letting me.
Thanks
show
for
my-
coming on.
Sure.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'm sure we'll have another conspiracy episode, and maybe Maya, if you want to come on in the future, you're more than welcome.
We love conspiracies.
Well, I could talk conspiracies all day for sure. so thanks. I might take you
Yes.
up.
Okay, well,
Sweet.
everyone, catch the next episode next weekend, and we'll see you then. Thank you again for coming on, Maya.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah,
You
St.
too.
Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. All right, see you guys.
See you.
Thanks.